what would you say discipleship is?
Discipleship. I don't see the difference between mentoring and discipleship. I just think the difference is like the focus of discipleship being that you're helping someone pick up their cross and be a disciple for Christ, rather than in mentorship it's broader, innit? Like you can have a mentor at your workplace, you can have a mentor from your ends, like whatever it is, but like they just kind of like more general. But with discipleship, there's more of the emphasis that it's for Christ, and it's like more of a biblical mentoring, if that makes sense. Yeah. So you can find mentoring in discipleship, but if you're just mentoring someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you're discipling them either, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, but that's the. I feel like it's not much of a difference, but it's kind of a key difference.
Yeah, I feel like when I think of discipleship, I think of like. Is it 1 Corinthians 11 when Paul says like imitate me as I imitate Christ? Yeah. I feel like that's kind of like the nature of discipleship, like almost like someone taking you on this journey of like I guess becoming more like Christ, but it's definitely influenced by their personal journey, if that makes sense. Like you're becoming made more like Jesus. Like Nap said, that's like at the core of it, but definitely the person who's also, because the person who's discipling is also on a journey becoming more like Jesus. So you're going to be shaped through scripture, but also through the person who's leading you's experience, life lessons, truths, that kind of thing. So that's the way I kind of see it. Like when Paul said to the people in Corinth, like imitate me as I imitate Christ. And so for example, there's so many times in 1 Corinthians where Paul suggests stuff like, I wish you man were alone. Like, I wish you man didn't have a booth. Like, you man were single and all that kind of stuff. But he always says like, he also says like, although like, he prefaces like, it's not truth. This is what I would want in my opinion. Do you get what I mean? And so like, you kind of see that kind of, I guess the pattern of discipleship there. Like, there's some things, the truth is at the core of it, but there's also some like personal experience that's shared.
You're pouring out into the person, I guess. Someone in it. So, what do you guys think?
I think it's similar. Like I like how you said it's basically like biblical mentorship in a way, and I also like that. I think that scripture is perfect. Like follow me as I follow Christ. It's kind of like somebody setting an example to you, both like in their lifestyle, but also like in the verbal instruction, the teaching, and also I think what's really important about discipleship is sometimes the things that are not biblical, in not biblical, but in like the opinions. Like for example, I do this way because of this. Because I think that sometimes like when you read scripture. And then you see sometimes people that have been in the faith 30, 40, 50 years. You're looking at scripture, looking at their life, thinking like, yo, like, I see the scripture and I see your life, but how did you get there? And I think it's sometimes them like little tips and tricks and lessons that they learned along the way that are not necessarily scripture, but that help them apply scripture that are really helpful. That are really, really helpful. And I think that's why I think it's that kind of thing. It's kind of somebody using their life to give you the tips and the tricks to live more like Christ.
Can you disciple if you haven't been discipled?
I think you can disciple somebody if you haven't necessarily been like, I don't think everybody needs, in order to disciple somebody, I don't think you need to have had some older guy or woman over you for a set period of time to say you've been discipled. Like,
it helps you, I guess.
It helps, definitely. It definitely helps.
It's not a be all end all for me.
But like, I wouldn't say that, you can't disciple somebody because you didn't have somebody 20 years older than you looking over you for a year or two. So you're not qualified to disciple somebody. I don't think that's true necessarily. But I think you do have to have been discipled in some way, shape or form. Because I was actually thinking about this. Something that made me think, I remember when I came out of uni, I was talking to one of my pastors at uni at the time. Shout out to boy Pastor Joe, big legend. Yeah, big legend. And one of the things I was saying to him was that I think something that I only realised kind of when I started speaking to him was that like I didn't know anybody older than me in the faith. Like I literally, because even though Pastor Joe, I went to church sometimes. The actual pastor of my church, I didn't really know him like that. See Pastor Roy, just Pastor Roy, briefly, I was like, he's saying, did you get me?
Got hot dogs after service.
Literally. But like I didn't, and then I realised like apart from my grandma, like I didn't really have anybody older than me. Like I just had you lot. Well, I never really thought about having anybody older because I had the man a minute. But I think it's like, it was funny because when we came out of uni, I remember, I don't know when it was, but somebody asked a question about marriage and man was just like, hey. I don't know. I got nothing to give you. We ain't got nothing to give nobody. And I think it's like from those experiences and like, even when like I was talking to Pastor Joe about like ministry and like just even parenting and stuff like that, I started to realise, like all the people is useful. And that's when I realised, I think that there's come a point where if you haven't been discipled, especially by an older person, you will be very limited in what you can pour in somebody's life. Because it's like, let's say Now, you're married, and let's say you're 28, 29, you have children or a child or two, and then like you have a young dude who's like 20, 21, but you never got discipled. You're kind of learning on the fly.
Yeah.
And so then now he's asking you, oh, what's the right way to do it? You kind of don't know because you're doing trial and error.
Yeah.
And so some things as an error, all you can kind of tell him is what not to do.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah, I
if
hear
you
you.
have your experience of what not to do and an older person who also has older friends and whatnot,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing I've learned from like speaking to people that are older in the faith is their experience in their life, but it's also the things that they were taught, the things that their friends have showed them, because they have not just more life experience, they have a whole circle of more life experience.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a limit to your discipling ability if you haven't been discipled properly.
Yeah.